button, right? Okay.
He hit it.
He did hit the button?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to have an intro, right? Yes. Okay.
That's you.
That's me. Well, today on Eternally Bored, I'm going to give it immediately to Trey without any preamble or intro. Usually we have one ready, but today, I don't know. Too much dog stuff.
All right. Today we're talking about basically technology-assisted board games, so games that use apps or apps that are involved in the playing of board games. We're not going to go over our top board gaming apps. That'll be a different episode and a different topic altogether. So like games that have been converted to board gaming apps, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about board games, the ones that you use on your table that also use apps in some way. But before we get to that, I'm gonna plug my game that's on Kickstarter right now.
Yes, plugs.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm gonna run a podcast, I'm gonna plug my own stuff. So it's called Imperial Spells in Steam. It's on Kickstarter right now. It is a pick up and deliver / action selection / route building game. If that sounds like something interesting to you, please go check it out. It's by Level 99 Games, and like their games always do, they have tons of replayability built in.
And great artwork as well.
Yeah. So, yeah.
I believe by the time this episode airs, it should be maybe in the second or third week of the podcast.
Yeah,
so you have
that's
a few more
correct.
days.
Yeah, you should have a couple more weeks to back him.
Yeah.
That's Imperial Spells in Steam, and Imperial spelled Empyreal, not Imperial like an empire, but Imperial like the heavens. And it's on BGG. It has an entry. You can go read the forums. The rule book is available. We have plenty of reviews and live videos of gameplay out. And it also has a Facebook group, so you can get updates there.
That's great. Do you have more plugs this episode, or is that it for today?
Do. We are going to continue plugging other...
Yes!
We will get to the content, I promise. But we are also talking about a podcast on the podcast network, which is Punchboard Media. And the one I'm talking about today is Boards Alive. This podcast really focuses on games with strong themes, and their mission statement is basically to highlight the hobby in a way that, showing that it's an exciting, fun hobby that is on par with, movies or music or things like that. Just a very entertaining and engaging hobby to get involved in. The hosts are Aaron and Quentin, and they are teachers like me, so...
Teachers.
It's always,
Viva la board!
It's always interesting how many teachers are in the board game industry and media, so it's very odd. But they have a really great chemistry on their show and really good humor. So if you like humor injected to your board game conversation, then go check them out. That's Boards Alive, a Punchboard Media podcast. All right, on to the topic du jour. We have with us our guest, Keith Turkowski. He is a game designer, both video and board game designer, which is why he's the perfect guest for this episode. And so our first question, are you generally for or against technology-assisted board games? Charles, why don't you take it away?
As far as technology-assisted board games, I am all for this in every way possible. I believe that while it is nice to sit at a table with people, there are just things that PCs or an app in your hand, a smartphone, would just handle better. Some of it's the day-to-day routine, some of it's the randomization of factors, and some of it is just principles that are just incorporated in the game that you just really couldn't replicate with just regular cardboard bits. And I think if you have the ability and everyone has these powerful supercomputers in their pocket, you might as well utilize it.
Keith?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it. I think it's just like another tool in the toolbox, so it's like, if you want to, you shouldn't use a hammer to pound a screw in, but, definitely it opens up. I think it's just great. I'm just super in favor of it, I guess, because it opens up new avenues for development, and it's like, I think keeping, like, new ideas coming into the board gaming and, like, iterating and polishing and just improving is something that just makes the hobby so much more enjoyable, because it's like, looking back even 5 or 10 years, it's like the games that are being made now, even if they're just regular board games, they're kind of building on like design ideas and improving them. So, and it's like, if I think that like technology in board games has actually been around since like board games were created. If you think about it, it's like, dice are essentially a technology. It's because it's like, like chess, I wouldn't say it has any technology. It's just kind of like you have a state and you have pieces, but
I would say all our life we've had like technology assisted board games, just battery operated board games.
Yeah.
I think I don't know anyone who doesn't remember there being a copy of Operation that's available and out the entire time. We're of the generation where we actually remember the very first electronic battleships, and some of our older viewers might remember the electronic football games that were sort of just vibrate metal and watch someone go across the screen. But I do believe as long as we've easily had access to electricity, we've been trying to find some way to incorporate it into our games. So
yeah.
What about you, Trey? How do you feel about?
I'm actually fairly strongly against it.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. I guess I'm just weird. So funny, I originally titled this episode, Get Off My Lawn. And then I retitled it, Get Off My Table. But I wasn't sure people were going to make the connection there. So, I don't know. I do support apps in board games and technology in general board games when there's no other way to do it. So, some examples are the second edition of Mansion of Madness, and we're going to talk about some other examples today. There are certain games where if you didn't use an app, you either couldn't do it at all, or it would be very, very inconvenient. The first edition of Mansions of Madness was really terrible on the upkeep for the Overlord, and it took them, I've heard reports, it took 30 minutes to set up the game, and it was mainly the Overlord that had to do all the work setting it up. So it's one person's playing the game, setting it up for 30 minutes, and then the app just got rid of all that. And now it's I think it got rid of even the all versus one component. I think it's just pure co-op now, and the app just runs everything. So, situations like that, I'm very much in favor of using the app because there's no other way to do it. But in general, I prefer to keep my technology, because I'm a big video gamer too, so it's not like I'm anti-technology, but I just prefer to keep those worlds as separate as possible for the most part.
Well, when I was thinking about my viewpoint of this episode, one of the biggest cons against supporting technology is a lot of people play games with their families, and the number one thing you want to do, especially with teenage kids, is get them off their cell phone and show them there's another way to entertain themselves.
Right.
So, mixing your board game alternative with that tends to complicate matters quite a bit, and actually getting them to focus on the game and not any of the miscellaneous feeds that are coming across their way, be it whatever feed that is popular at the moment. I'm so behind that I feel like you would know what's popular right now. I know it's past Snapchat now. That was where I was last at. So.
Well, yeah. Well, Snapchat released an update that ruined their own service. So now Instagram's still big. Kids are on Twitter.
Yeah. And I see recently went out with some of my younger cousins, and they're just going on Discord watching live streams of Fortnite tournaments or PUBG tournaments. But anyways, going on to other things.
Yeah, so I guess the next question was, how has it changed our hobby? Keith, you want to start?
Yeah, so when I was looking at the topic, I kind of started thinking about, because the topic is technology, and it's we're probably going to focus mostly on apps, but I started thinking about technology in board games, and that was kind of what I was talking about earlier. It's I think one of the oldest games is the Royal Game of Ur, which I just watched a really awesome video on. But that game's thousands of years old. I think it was the rules were lost for several thousand years, but they have dice in that game, and I think dice are probably one of the first. I mean, I can't think of a game probably the earliest games probably did use dice, and dice are technology, and so I was so I started thinking about that, and then I was well, I think what technology does is it allows new mechanics to be introduced into a game. And I kind of wrote down a couple, I'm sure there's tons, but it's I just wanted to think about it. So it's dice add this random element to the game. In the same way shuffling card decks or shuffling tiles, they add this randomness. Other games that use technology, so Escape from the Curse of the Temple uses an hourglass to time, or lots of games use hourglasses. So that's another technology, which is timing technology, or real time. Mm-hmm. And then I think there's also what apps have kind of brought into it is upkeep and revealing technology. So revealing technology actually existed before that, which if you think about Clue has a hidden information.
Right.
The problem with that is that level of technology is you only get to look at the cards once and then you're out of the game. And I think now with apps, it's the app can actually peek for you and just tell you yes or no. Mm-hmm. So I think the two areas that apps have really opened up room for improvement and other things are, first is revealing. So if you play like Alchemist, it's basically doing checks and kind of revealing partial information from a secret state, and that makes the ability for the app to do these complex things has made like a really awesome game. The other area, which I think hasn't really even been touched on, is upkeep. So like, like some games like, I mean,
Dominant Species.
yes, Dominant Species. Like I play the app, I can play a game of Dominant Species on the app in like 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes. It's like you play that in person, it's going to take 3 hours or more probably. And that's like probably 30% to 50 or even more percent of the time of the game is just upkeep, like putting cubes out, and you're probably going to make mistakes. So I think like I'm really excited to see like apps used for upkeep, because it's like, imagine, I mean, you could have like giant army, like just war games with like huge armies, and it's like you don't, like imagine having like 50 archers instead of just one archer that you roll for, or something, Anyway, I think hasn't been touched on, but I'm kind of like, the future is like, I kind of think that is. So I don't know. Anyway, I guess like I'd say like I think when a new technology comes out, it revolutionizes the game industry. Like people just jump on it. It's like the new hot thing. But I mean, even like app save stuff. Like I played a game that came out. I just looked up when it came out. It's like 1982, called Lost Treasure by Parker Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like you had a grid and you were like sailing a ship around looking for sunken treasure, and it would like, you would tell you like, oh, there's treasure close to you, and then you had like this little console and you'd punch like which region you wanted to look for treasure, and then it would. So anyway, it's kind of like, so I think it's been around for a long time, and it's been changing it.
I mean, a bit of board game history. In the early 80s, there was a board game people might have heard of called Electronic Battleship.
Yeah.
It had phenomenal retail success and mainstream popularity, and from that, they released a slew of games from like 82 to 88 that were capitalizing off the electronic thing, or sort of trend, trying to catch that battleship in a bottle again. And
which is kind of funny, because I think like Battleship, I mean, I didn't really play Electronic Battleship, but
you remember the marketing.
Yeah, but I remember the marketing. But it was like, I think like that was like another category that technology brought in that I put down, which is mood. And because you can play Battleship without the like the electronic version. I don't even know if electronic version does anything other than add mood to it, like, or
yeah, but back then no one had
yeah, right,
games.
Right.
So I actually owned Electronic Battleship, and I remember the other games around it. Having sound effects.
Electronic
in the game.
Stratego.
Didn't have that one.
Okay, so Electronic Stratego actually added a new like mechanic, which was like you could you put them. So in regular Stratego, the mines are pieces. In Electronic, you put them in locations, and then you put your own pieces on the top of them. So like they don't actually take up space on the board, but they're like in certain spaces are mines. So.
Like where the engineers would start would be with the mines, and then from there. Okay.
Yeah, you actually had a little secret grid, and you would put pegs in there to put mines in those spaces. So you could like put mines wherever you wanted. But
well, anyways, I was going to say we have another question here, and I guess we'll get Trey in since he's been out for a while. Do you think app-assisted board games are the wave of the future? And would you design a board game that required an app?
I would say I would design a game that could use an app to help. Like, there's an adventure game that I've been working on for a long time, and it has books that you use, but I wouldn't mind if like there was also an app. So that you wouldn't have to refer to the book. You could just punch in numbers and it'll just go straight to the page. Mm-hmm. So like I wouldn't mind designing a game that you could also use an app to play, but I don't think I'm interested in designing a game that requires an app. Like that, first of all, it makes a lot of people upset. Like a lot of people are mad that like XCOM, for instance, required an app to play. So I wouldn't want to like alienate a section of the audience people like me who don't really like to use apps in games. So I'm not interested in designing that kind of game. But yeah, I mean, a game that like could use an app to help play, then I have no problem with that.
Well, for instance, like a lot of these games, like Gloomhaven or Seafall, or Above and Below, where you're going to certain numbers and pages.
Yeah.
I think that would be perfectly fine for an app, especially if they wanted to even randomize the outcomes a bit, depending upon choices in character class. One of the things I noticed in Gloomhaven is that you end up on these quests where you might not have that character class, and then you just don't you're like locked out of an option. Whereas if you had an app, you could, and you told them what character classes you were playing in, you could just have a different sort of scenario for each individual character class when they got there, or a detriment to them. So you just sort of add more layers into the game. So Gloomhaven 3.0, Childress.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think. Yeah, I've thought about designing a game for a while that kind of was like an adventure game, and I've thought about just like putting like all the text into an app. But I do think that I think the biggest danger in using like app technology specifically is like you can lose it. Like you could. I mean, some board games that we play are like 30 or 40 years old, and it's like. Like if those had like actual electronic, but it's like if the electronics corrode or something, like how are you going to play that? You can't even play the game anymore. And I think like even Alchemist has like I mean, you play the game with the app, but it can be played without the app. And I think it's like, in maybe 20 years from now, I mean, who knows if like people will be even using the same technologies or if that app will even be available. So it's like, you're going to sit down and play Alchemist, and luckily you can play it without the app, but it would be like, I mean, I think it would just be a tragedy. And that happens in the video game industry. Like, games just go away, and you can't really play them anymore. Yeah.
Shut down the servers.
Yeah, so it's like, I think...
Until Good Old Game came around, and then now there's like the whole company just devoted on making really old video games compatible with modern systems.
Yeah.
But I don't know if something like that would happen for board games, who knows?
Yeah, so I think...
They'll reprint the game. If it's good enough. I mean, that's what.
Yeah, so I do think like it's good to have like a little pushback against this. I mean, I like it, but having pushback and like kind of, I think, it helps preserve like gaming experience, because it's like, I'd really hate to have like a really awesome game and then like want to play it some time down the road and it's like, oh well, the app's no longer in the app store, or it doesn't run on your current OS version on your device, so it's like, well, you can't play this game anymore. And it's like, yeah.
Well, ironically, in doing my research for this episode, I came across one of my honorable mention games, which is Clue, Secret, and Spas, which is basically a reimagining of Clue, where it has a lot of differences, but one of the main ones is you get to choose to move any character you want to any room in order to do your investigation, but only the person who is that character gets the benefit long term, and who you are is anonymous because that's held within the app. But for that app, the other thing that wasn't the app, it was sort of like they gave you cards for your identity, like Old Clue. But the app itself, it wasn't the app, it was you would call in to a text message service. So you send them a text message, and then over the course of an hour, they would send you back 6 random text messages that altered the game, or would do something special depending for different people. Or
I played that game with y'all.
Right, or you played it, you had it, and I can't remember where it went. But anyways,
I didn't have it.
They took down the phone number for that.
Oh no!
But then someone who played the game a lot compiled all the text messages, and then they turned that into an app. And I think if the game is good enough, then the technology, someone will take the technology, which will be smaller, and move it up to make it
fans
current.
can save things like that. It just requires like one super fan of a game to have some programming knowledge, and then they can just make their own app. If the company shuts down. So I've heard that complaint a lot about people who are even stronger against apps and games than I am. But because of that reason, that usually these things are pretty easily fixable by fans in the community. If like the company goes out of business and they don't maintain the app anymore, someone can just go and save it or create their own version of the app pretty easily. So I don't think it's that valid of a criticism. I have a lot of criticisms about apps and games, but I don't think that's one that is really a big concern, because if it has any kind of fan base, someone in the fan base will save it and make the game playable.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, like Alchemist someone could easily remake the app.
Yeah. What about there's in the news been a lot of companies developing a digital tabletop. Do you think those will ever take off and threaten to replace physical boards, or not really?
I'm super excited about this. It's actually the whole reason, because I'm an avid follower of CES and other consumer electronics shows and other things in nature. I do believe that the gaming tabletops will be something that will happen. I think it's a little far away. I've seen where the end level technology might be, and it's just not commercially feasible. Where, right now you can get basically a plasma or not plasma, but an LED or OLED table and just put it down, and it can be like anywhere between 46 to 80 inches, and they're touchscreen interactive tables. Or actually, I think there's one that's double, so it's like 55 inches, and it's like two 55-inch screens side by side in tandem. But the one thing I would say about these tables is they're still just like screens, so it's still basically like you're playing on a tablet. So
Yeah. Right.
even if you had like an entire game where you could touch it, because at that size you could literally just have the board project on or project from the table. Still, what's the point? You'd be basically putting it on a table.
Yeah. Why not just play multiplayer video games at that point?
Right. Then there's a level above that, which I think, which is old technology, which is hologram technology,
Yeah.
which they tried to have in the
They try to bring that
90s.
back all the time.
And they always are trying to
The
bring it
old
back.
hologram technology is not like modern though, because the old one relied on mirrors, right?
Mhm.
But the modern hologram, you can see it from any angle.
Yeah.
But that's a lot harder and more expensive to do.
Yeah, I actually went to a gaming convention a few years ago where they had like I forget what the game was. Maybe it was probably like Pokemon or something. But they were like you had like a little table and then you would scan cards and then you would you would have like a hologram of the card come onto the battlefield.
Right.
Which I mean that was just kind of a gimmick, but yeah.
I actually. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's probably gonna be a couple of decades before that technology goes from gimmick to practical and affordable. But that is something I'm more interested in. I'm not really interested in buying a game table that just does two-dimensional electronic board games because, like I said, just play a multiplayer video game. There's tons of those out there if you're going to do that. But I would be interested in having a holographic table because you could do some really amazing things with a holographic board game table where you can actually see the pieces on the map in 3 dimensions,
Yeah.
And the other thing that is sort of working with that too is like the glass heads-up display glass. Like not just
augmented reality.
Augmented reality
Yeah.
glasses and sensors can do that, where you can like place a card or something on there, and it reads the barcode, and then depending upon the angle of the barcode, it could move, or it would make a figurine do certain things. I mean, you have to sort of link everything together, but I mean, I've seen it done before. I've also seen dedicated cameras, like before, like you have VR right now, which is doing fairly well. Not taking over, but for a new technology, it has some fervent adopters. It has, I think Oculus is still doing fine on PC relatively.
Yeah, I mean it's a relatively new field.
Yeah.
So
PSVR is, the cheaper alternative. It hasn't really taken it off, but it does have a lot of support, and I do think, Sony tried to do something a few years ago where they partnered with Wizards of the Coast and they made a video game called Eye of Judgment, which was basically like a battle grid of tic-tac-toe where you're trying to get 5 squares under your control in a row, and if you did that, then you would win. But it had it used the camera, and you actually would buy physical cards in packs. You put them on the board in front of your camera, and then you can move them around and stuff, and you would see them animate on your screen.
I think all these things where you like scan cards, I really think it's like the marketing department like trying to figure a way to make money off of the technology, because it's like, oh well, we'll just sell people physical cards that they'll have to buy, like they're trying to make like a collectible card game or something, and it's like I feel like when you use a technology in a gimmicky fashion like that, it's just hard to make it work. It's like you just need to like fully embrace the technology and build a game for that technology,
which is what Magic the Gathering Arena
right.
is. So.
Yeah. And I think also like we talked about like virtual or holographic stuff, but I think like alternate reality is kind of like people are pushing that technology, and I think that's one area like there could be it's like you just put on your headset and you can see like it just draws like pieces on the board or whatever. But I am like actually excited about the big tabletop, like the 2D tabletop tablets, because that was what I mentioned earlier about like upkeep technology. I think the potential for upkeep technology when you have like a tablet like that is just insane. Like you could play, because like we don't play, Dominant Species very often just because of the upkeep and it takes so long. And it's like if we had a tablet board, we could actually get that game played in like an hour or two, and then it becomes feasible to play in some of the settings that we play board games in. So, I think just like the potential to open up things like that is just, it's like you get a lot more game in a shorter amount of time.
And ironically, Trey, and I think you might agree, that if technology does come to board gaming, I believe the miniatures are going to lead the way. Because, like, if you think about what you can do with line of sight and certain complicated miniatures, just imagine if you had a miniature that you could paint that had a barcode on the bottom of it that went on a table and established all its line of sight and its attack angles via your glasses or whatever is on the tables. So you could just say, this, attack that, and just point to it, and it will give you all the options, but with 2 clicks. People would love that. I think they would eat it up. And plus, miniature, if you had specialized terrain for it too, there you go.
Well,
$1,500 a pop Kickstarter.
Exactly. Well, we are going to, I'm sure, return to this topic in the future as technology continues to develop, but we should really get to our top 3 because we're going kind of long. Let's start with honorable mentions. So we did top 3 technology-assisted games, and my honorable mentions, I just have 2. And the reason they're not on the list is because I haven't played either of them. One, because it's not out yet. The other one, just because it's expensive, although it's getting cheaper because it wasn't very popular. And that game is Drop Mix. It's a game where basically you have cards, and the cards are songs, and you can drop them onto this board, and the board reads the cards and then uses an app to basically mix the songs together. So basically you're doing your own song mashups just by putting cards on a board. And I've heard from everyone, the actual game is kind of thin and pointless, but just the ability to just put songs down on a mat and then like the game just creates a mashup song based on the cards you put down, that's just fascinating and interesting. So probably a excellent use of technology, and I'd like to try it sometime. And then Detective, a modern crime board game. This is a game that's not out yet, and basically it's a detective story, kind of like Sherlock Holmes, Consulting Detective, or something like that. But it's a game that uses phone technology to basically scan different cards and give you different clues, and you can look up. You're supposed to look up and actually do some research on your phone to help you solve the case. So it's it sounds like a fascinating concept. It sounds like it's almost too app heavy for my taste, that I wouldn't be interested in it. But all the reviews I've read said it's very, very good. So when it comes out, I'll probably pick it up.
Is it a Kickstarter game, or is it
no, the Detective City of Angels was kickstarted, and I backed that, but it doesn't use technology. It's an also detective type game, but it doesn't use any technology. This game was not kickstarted, but it's almost out in retail.
From the same company?
No, I think it's a different company. Charles, did you have honorable mentions too?
I incorporated a few of them in the show, so Judgments and Clues, Secret and Spies, I will go past and head straight to World of Yoho, which is a...
I heard that's really good.
Yeah, I've heard. It's basically you have a 6x9 map, and each of the spaces on that map is the size of your cell phone, and you put your cell phone on the board and use it as a player piece. And the cell phone itself, the regular display, matches the board underneath it. And then you move around the sort of pirate ships, and you can attack people or explore different things on islands. Probably the one detriment is that you use your phone as a piece, but you oftentimes have to pick up your phone as well to do stuff on it. The main criticism that some people say you don't really need the board, but it looked very nice with the board. And I think as far as the game itself, it's sort of like playing a board game version of Age of Booty, which is a popular video game about 10 years ago from Capcom. So.
Okay. Keith?
I guess it's kind of hard to find games in this genre that I'm just super excited about. But I guess I'd say my honorable mention would be Escape the Curse of the Temple. It doesn't really do much. It's really just like an audio track.
Yeah, it could be a CD, but that's not technology.
Yeah. But I do think the music kind of, if you're in a quiet environment, it's kind of cool. And I do think that it does do a little bit. I mean, it's a little bit better than using, because it does come with a timer. But it's like when you use the timer, it's just very hard to like. You kind of like will find yourself taking breaks and not necessarily flipping it over right away, or you have to watch the timer to make sure, And I think that the app does kind of improve upon the timing, So that'd be my honorable mention.
All right. So our number 3, I went with Unlock, which is a escape room style game that basically uses an app to run the whole thing. So like you find things on the card and you punch numbers in and it tells you if you were correct or not, and if you're wrong, it penalizes the time. So it also keeps time. You have basically an hour to solve the game. And when you make mistakes, it docks your time. And the hint system is also built into the app, so if you need hints, you can just press a hint button and it'll give you hints, but that affects your score, so it also keeps track of your score. So it just, I think, is a very good implementation of like an app helping a game just run it and be possible, because it kind of wouldn't be possible the way the game is without the app.
Is that the first Unlock game that required an app, or?
No, they all require apps.
They all do? Okay.
They all use the same app, yeah. All the versions of the game are built into the app, so when you start up the app, you just select which one that you're playing. Okay. And so I think it's really well done. There are some problems I have with the app, mainly like if you press the wrong thing, you can't undo it. So like if you press something and it affects your score, or if you type in the wrong number, but you meant to type in a different number, you can't like fix that. It's still going to dock your time. So I think the one thing the app needs is an undo button. Like if you press the wrong button and it screws up the experience, there should be an undo button to where that didn't happen.
I don't know. I think a limited mulligan, maybe a 1 or 2 mulligan that you could set at the beginning before you start the game might work better, because people abuse undo buttons.
That's true, but I mean, there's no, like, it's a co-op game, so you're not, like, there's no reason to, like, not advantage the players, because they're only playing against themselves. So.
I'll give you one reason. Emma Miller.
Why? No, it's more like Keith. Yeah. Keith always tries to cheat and unlock.
I mean, I'm just trying to make the game fair.
All right, you're gonna choose keys of cheating. What's your number 3, Keith?
I mean, I'm gonna cheat on this top 3 list by not listing an actual game. So my top number 3 is Choosy. So it's like the little app you use to see who goes first in games.
And yeah, let me spell it for everyone, because it's like in French. It's like the French word for choose. And
Chwazi.
There you go. Yeah.
I think
Chwazi. Yeah. Chwazi. Yeah, it's a really good randomizer app.
And I'm actually going to use something that is not really a gaming technology, but I found is a very good app from a company who does it a lot, which is not One Night Werewolf, regular Ultimate Werewolf with the app. I really enjoy the timekeeping app.
Oh, it has an app?
App for Werewolf.
That is actually good. You use that a lot.
I use it a lot. It keeps people on timer. It keeps people on schedule. It's very easy to read the numbers.
Yeah.
Plus, you have a separate button where you can do defense timers, and you can change the day to make it longer or shorter from increments automatically. So the days end up getting shorter as you eliminate more people, which helps keep the pace of the game going very well. And it's also makes it easier to enforce the rules, because when the time is over, you end the day, and
repercussions just over. And then they don't blame you; they don't blame the narrator. They're like,
they can only blame themselves. And plus, Bezier also used it to add some app-based roles to the game as well, but those aren't quite as good as just using the regular app to facilitate.
Yeah, and it's not just for the moderator, because I think the players are just look at the timer. I mean, like you mentioned, but it's like players do look at that timer, and it becomes an integral part of the game. So,
excellent. My number 2 is One Night Ultimate Werewolf. So this is a game I think you can play it without the app, but I never would, because the app just makes everything easier. It narrates the game for you. You just select what roles are in. It tells you what to do. So you don't have to follow a script. It removes any need for anyone to run the game, because the app runs the game. So it's just like a almost mandatory requirement.
So I think. There's 4 expansions to that game, or 3 expansions, and Alien requires the app. You cannot play without it.
Yeah. So I mean, my number 2 is also One Night Ultimate Werewolf. I I do think that the app could be improved in a couple of ways. Like one,
It needs to be louder.
yes.
One.
I mean, maybe that's just the device you're playing on, but it's like playing in somewhat noisy environments. Like we can't. Like I bought the 4th expansion, like the One Night Alien expansion. It's like it's unplayable in the group because we play in a somewhat noisy setting when we play, and it's just too loud for like a group of like 7 or 8 people around a table to all hear it. And then, yeah. So I feel like that is like a problem. Maybe like get like a portable Bluetooth speaker that's like louder or something. But yeah, that's one problem. And then the other problem is like people actually have to touch the device, and I think I mean One Night's pretty easy to teach people, but like I had more trouble getting people to like push the button when they were supposed to on the app than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, it's most people play these apps on their cell phones, and this app is One Night Alien is best played with a tablet, if I remember.
Yeah.
A large, actually a Surface, really.
Yeah.
Is
and loudspeakers or quiet environment, because it's like it's very hard to hear.
My number 2 is actually was a CD that got turned into an app that made the entire experience better, and that is Space Alert from Vlada Chvátil. And Space Alert won a few awards a long time ago, but basically, originally it came with a CD which had 14 scenarios on them, and they were always scripted in order to get through. It has since they've had the original audio tracks brought into an app. The app now randomizes all the various audio tracks, so you can either go to the original 14, or I think they had an expansion which added 10 more, or you can mix all of those different tracks and things that could happen together to make basically almost like 1,000 to 2,000 different varieties of games and scenarios at different difficulty levels that could happen. And the game itself is real time and great, and having the app that gives you the combination of the original CD and a whole new randomized scenario makes the gameplay or the replayability almost infinite.
All right. My number 1, I'm going to cheat like Keith and put anything on Tabletop Simulator. So this is not a game as much as it's a system to play games digitally. So it's like you're playing the physical version of the game because it doesn't implement the rules for you. You still have to know the rules. You have to implement them yourself. It just has all the physical components scanned into digital form. And I've only used Tabletop Simulator. I think there's a couple of more out there that I don't remember the name of, but they're basically just ways to play board games digitally. So like if you want to play board games with a fellow board gamer but they live in another city, we're using it right now to test Imperial because my publishing company is based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, so I can't play test with them in person. So we're using that to play test, and it's been amazing. My big thing about it that I love is you press a button and it sets up the game. Like literally, like games that take 5-10 minutes to set up, you press a button and the entire board is ready to go and everything's randomized, and that is a super convenient thing.
So I suppose that for a person who left Gloomhaven set up for 8 weeks, that would be convenient, correct?
Like Gloomhaven, I love the game, but dang, it takes 30 minutes to set up and 30 minutes to break down. So if you're gonna play Gloomhaven, just leave it set up. Like that is how to play that game, because putting it up is a pain. So anyway, that's my number 1 is Tabletop Simulator or similar apps that just let you play physical board games in a digital form.
My number 1, which is probably
it's my number 1,
which is really Charles' number 1, is probably the number 1 for a lot of people, is Alchemists.
With the King's Golem expansion.
Yes. I mean,
it's not my number 1.
Well, the app is just like very well done. It fits the game. It works. Other than the one time I scanned a card wrong and completely ruined my whole game, it generally works fairly well as long as you just make sure you scan things properly.
Yeah. And it confirmed. You basically have to confirm a result.
Yeah.
And
which I didn't do, but now
don't confirm, you're done. Yeah.
Yeah, but it works well in general. I mean, we played it dozens of times, and that's the only problem I've ever had. And I think, I just think it's like it's just great. It allows that game to be played in a way, and I don't think that game would have existed without the app. And it's like a super fun game, and I really want to see more games like that.
App, I thought.
You can, but you need a player basically to
Yeah.
be the one running the game. So, yeah, I mean, which isn't really feasible, I think, for a lot of people.
It's worse than a moderator position. All
Yeah.
they are is to answer
it-
questions.
Could it be someone playing who's at another table playing a different game?
Yes.
Okay.
It could be, but it's like you would probably have to ask them about 20 to 30 questions during the course of a game. So,
That's
it's,
that close to 50.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
that'd
guess
be
with the
pretty
King's
annoying,
Golem
yeah.
expansion, yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Uh,
But yeah, I think just great. I hope. I mean, I'd love to see another expansion. I doubt that one will be made, but any games that are like in that vein are just like I'm super excited for if they come out.
well, I think it's a really bad game, but I do have one. I'm not gonna go
Get
into
off
the,
my lawn! Game with a cell phone.
No, that's not my main problem with the game. Like I have a lot of design problems with the game, but I do have on topic one thing to point out is that when we tried it, the app was terrible. Although I'm sure from the way y'all are talking, the app has improved. But like we could never get it to scan the cards. It would take us like sometimes 2-3 minutes to get it to scan the card. But
think-
that was pre-release.
And you also haven't played the King's Golem.
I haven't
expansion.
played the expansion. Yeah, no, I played
it
it. At,
improves the game a lot.
I played it
actually.
at Origins before it was even released into the wild. So I was playing a prototype version, and they had not mastered the app yet. And so like we were just sitting there and just getting really frustrated because we couldn't get the phone to scan things. So
Yeah, I think it's
I
just
guess
like
it's better now.
it's
Yeah.
hard. The lighting I think is important, which is I think part of the reason they maybe had that little.
Yeah, why
Tray
did they
that
just
goes
put
up on top.
QRC codes then? Like, why do they require on camera
It
to
had
recognize things?
it had 3 updates within the first week, or 3 updates within the first month for the app. So it did.
Yeah, it works. It works fairly well now. I don't have really any major complaints with it.
All right. So did we do everyone's? Yeah, because y'all had the same. All right. Well, we'll probably just wrap it up. Unless Keith, did you wanna? We can save our recently played games to next episode. But
Okay.
do
Yeah, we
you?
went a little
Since
long
Keith,
today.
you're not going to be here. Do you want to talk about any games you played recently?
I mean, I guess I've been playing Gaia Project a little bit, which.
How are you liking it?
I mean, it's good. I mean, it obviously has huge balance issues, but for now, the complexity of the game is kind of keeping that, at bay a little bit. But I think once maybe the game figure the game out a little better, that'll become more of a problem. But for now, I'm enjoying it, and I'm just playing a lot of the old games. We played Alchemist recently.
Dominant Species.
Dominant Species, yeah. Venos, right? Or
Oh,
Viticulture.
did you play the new version, second
Yeah,
edition?
yeah.
Oh, how was it?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it
Yeah, I keep
fixes
thinking-
literally the 5 top issues I had with the game. It fixed. So one.
Oh, wow.
So one is you couldn't sell wine. Now they have a way you can without the right contract. So now you can just sell wine for victory points. One of the other ones was the start player taking the bottom action, which gives you an extra work around one, was overly powerful, and now taking that makes you go first. So
But it still has some
Yeah, it's-
extremely broken cards. in it.
yes, it still has some broken cards.
Yeah,
I think there was
so-
one called the Tavern that's you can discard 2 grapes to get 3 victory points every time you play a blue or yellow card, which is just broken. I don't know. But there are lots of broken
Is
cards.
this
So.
Vinhos or Viticulture?
Viticulture.
It
Yeah.
sounds like you're describing Viticulture.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I haven't played Venus
Viticulture.
recently.
Okay,
Yeah.
I really want to try the second edition of Vinhos.
Oh, sorry.
I played the first edition and I liked it, but yeah, Viticulture was a pretty terrible game on release. But the new version, where Uwe Rosenberg went through the cards and fixed the worst ones. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly he didn't maybe totally
Yeah.
balance it, but he took the worst ones out. That Jamie Stegmaier was just like, I actually. If you go to the Viticulture forums for first edition, you can find a thread of me and Jamie Stegmaier debating on whether or not the card that gives you 4 victory points is broken. And I was just like, dude, this is 1/5 of the victory points you need to win the game, and it's just a card that you randomly draw. And he was like, no, I demand that this is balanced. It's my game. Blah blah blah. Jamie Stegmaier. I think he's a good designer. Well, he's a somewhat good designer, but I don't know.
Keep it square.
I mean,
Look,
he needs a developer. Let's put that. He's a
Look.
designer who needs a
I
developer.
mean,
but all designers
all
need
developers need more playtesting, I think.
Yeah.
If you look at older games that were great for a long time, like Puerto Rico, the base game of Puerto Rico, I feel is fairly balanced, and I think now it's people just don't spend as much time playtesting and balancing their game, and I would love to see more of that come back into vogue because I think it's a problem with a lot of games now. Modern games.
Yeah. Well, it's just the push to get the game out the door. I mean, like, it takes years to develop a board game, and at some point you just have to kind of call it and release it. Unfortunately, it might not be totally balanced by the time you do, but, you know.
Well, anyways.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us. I hope this episode was interesting. Don't forget to check out my game on Kickstarter, Imperial Spells and Steam. Don't forget to check out Punchboard Media and check out all their different podcasts. And don't forget to check out us on YouTube. We're at Eternally Bored. Also on Twitter, and that's bored with a O-A-R-D, just like board games. So
Like, share, subscribe.
Things that you never get tired of hearing.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody
And
gets
don't
tired of hearing
forget to click the bell icon, because YouTube, if you believe it, won't notify you unless you click. Sorry, I'm just repeating what I hear every YouTuber say. So.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. All right, well, and we have a website, www.eternallybored.com. So until next time, we're eternally bored, so you don't have to be. Peace.
Yay.